Okay, awesome. Welcome so much to my session today, 10 power moves to help you pivot, reboot, and build a career of purpose. I'm super thrilled to be here today. It says, okay, do you see the number next to share audio and video that shows how many people? Oh, yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. So you guys can see my presentation as well. So we have an hour together for this session, and I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to get straight into it with the presentation because I'm sure that you guys are, let us get some more people. Okay, I'll wait. I've never actually been part of a virtual event before, so this is kind of fun. I'm so excited that mother honestly decided to keep doing this. That's awesome. Yes, I'll wait. Totally wait. And if you guys who are joining us from the chat, I think it'd be really fun if you guys want to just kind of get comfortable in there. Let me know where you're joining from. I'm in Los Angeles, in the Career Contessa office. Exactly. Well, it's not very sunny today, believe it or not. I think it might rain in LA, which is, I know, very unheard of. Atlanta. Awesome, Jennifer. I have a good friend that just moved to Atlanta from LA right before the pandemic. She said the humidity is starting to take place there in Atlanta, and I don't think she was quite prepared for that. She's not a fan of humidity. I don't know who is. Yep, it's very real. Anyone else who is just starting to join us on the session today, my name is Lauren McGoodwin. I'm the founder and CEO of Career Contessa. I'm really excited to be hosting a workshop. We're going to learn 10 power moves to help you pivot, reboot, and build a career of purpose. If you are just joining us, feel free to say in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm in the Career Contessa office in Los Angeles. Jennifer is also in here. She's from Atlanta. Yes, you do have lots of sun for the summer. That is for sure. Hot sun. We're talking about humidity. And we're just going to wait until Mother honestly gives me kind of the thumbs up to get started with the presentation. And I'll make sure with the workshop, you guys know it's being recorded, so you can have a notepad out and take notes, but you'll also get a recording of this. And then I'm going to do my best to make sure that we have time for Q&A at the end. So we will kind of just hang tight while people make their way over from the main stage over to the session. Okay, we are got the thumbs up. That means we are officially get started. All right. So hi, everybody who's slowly joining us. My name is Lauren McGoodwin. I'm the founder and CEO of Career Contessa. And today we're going to go over a workshop on 10 power moves to help you pivot, reboot, and build a career of purpose. So, and then also feel free to add your questions into the chat. I'll probably try to get to those at the very end. And because when I'm looking at the presentation, I don't see that chat as well. So I'll switch back and forth and we'll take some pauses. But let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned already, my name is Lauren McGoodwin. I'm the founder and CEO of Career Contessa, which launched in 2013, originally as a complete side hustle, side project, whatever you want to call it. I was working in recruiting at Hulu, and I was working on my master's, and I wrote my master's on millennial women and career resources, and Career Contessa was that prototype. Prior to launching Career Contessa, I was an admin assistant inside of a dental school, very unfulfilled in my career and pretty much desperate to figure out how can I get into a career that I really love and I enjoy and is a good fit for me. So And, you know, all of that is a 10+ year journey that I'm condensing into just a few seconds. But if you haven't checked out Career Contessa, definitely do so. We are your one-stop shop resource for everything you need to help you be more fulfilled, healthy, and successful at work. We have job postings, we have online education, career coaching marketplace, you name it, we have it. So definitely make sure that if you are looking for a good resource in that area, that we are on your list. All right, and then I kind of always say this at the beginning of all my presentations, because I really do believe that you get out of a presentation or a workshop what you put into it. And part of that is just being totally present if you can for the next 60 minutes. So putting those phones away, closing out of browsers and other tabs. And like I mentioned, this is being recorded, but you can definitely take out a notepad and take notes because it might help jog your memory later on. But you know, again, you get out of it what you put into it. So just being present is probably the most important thing. All right, so let's talk about if you're in the right place for this session. So you're in the right place if you want to invest in your career development. Sounds pretty good. You're in the right place if you want to learn tools that will help you see flexibility and adaptability as your best professional assets. And you're in the right place if you're tired of career advice that doesn't actually give you actionable tips. So everything in this presentation is going to be incredibly actionable. You'll be able to, like I said, take notes and implement these tips today. You're in the right place if you're ready to make a power move, which don't worry, I'm going to go over the whole explanation of what is a power move, because I know oftentimes we think of a power move as like quitting your job or telling someone, you know, the thing you've been trying to say for months or something like that. I've got kind of my own unique spin on what a power move is. And so we'll go over that. And of course, stay tuned till the very end to learn about my book. It's called Power Moves. It just came out on May 19th. Power Moves, How Women Can Pivot, Reboot, and Build a Career of Purpose. So it just came out on May 19th. You can order it right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about additional power moves that I talk about in my book at the end. Okay, so let's talk about kind of the background story of, and hopefully you guys can see this slide, but I'll read it to you. So kind of the story of how we got here, and the got here and the here that I'm talking about is sort of this place where I call it like this ambition ditch, in the sense of like, we, you know, many of us are maybe millennials, or even if you're not a millennial, you've been influenced by the millennial generation because they were the largest generation to come about. And also they were very much like a very unique generation in that we grew up as kind of nicknamed the trophy generation. We've got this hustle culture. And the reason why I bring this up is because it's important for people to understand how we got here in order to understand how we're going to move forward. And I think if I could sum up the millennial generation, the impact it's had on the workplace overall is that they're the first group of digital natives. They have definitely become these type A high achievers is more the norm than not. And that was partly, hey, success is a formula. If you do 1 + 1, you're going to get 2, right? X + Y = Z. And so one of the things that leads us to is that us as a generation, especially as a generation of women, we don't lack ambition. We are extremely ambitious. We work really hard, but at times we can lack direction. And a part of that is because we grew up in this feedback culture. We were getting consistent feedback. We were getting awards, again, that kind of like trophy generation. And the problem is real life doesn't work like that. And so it has led a lot of us, especially as women, to be like, wait, I checked all the right boxes. I feel like I did everything I was supposed to do. And why am I not, you know, more fulfilled or in a place in my career where I can have, you know, kids and the career and all the other things. And part of that is a lot of us are suffering from what I call an expectation hangover. So let's get into, so that's kind of the story of, you know, how we got here. And I'm sure a lot of the things I'm saying and some of these phrases you guys can absolutely relate to, right? Again, we don't lack ambition. It's not about our lack of hustle and hard work. It's the fact that we lack direction, and also the fact that we feel, or at least we bought into this quote unquote promise that, you know, past generations, they didn't get it right because of this or because of that, but we got everything right. And why are we here? So that's a little bit of how we got here. Now, which I think is important, because if you can understand maybe how you got here and kind of the definitions of why you might be feeling stuck, we can talk about how to move forward. But let's first talk about what type of stuck you are, because there's three main ways that people, especially women, feel stuck in their career. The first one is probably one you guys have heard a lot, burnout. It's now something that can officially be diagnosed as a person having burnout. Some of the symptoms are chronic fatigue. They are feelings of, there's like even different types of burnout. So burnout is something you guys have probably heard a lot. The other type of stuck you are is what we call the great stalling. The great stalling is not quite burnout and in like the chronic fatigue where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even have the energy to do one more thing. The great stalling is feeling stuck because you have no idea what you're working on and why you're working on it. It's kind of like you don't really feel like you're moving backwards, but you don't really feel like you're moving forward. You're just kind of going through your day to day, but with no real idea why you're doing it. And you know, again, it's kind of in the name, the great stalling. You're stalled out. A third way that people get stuck is feeling lost at work, although it's not really lost. It's more like you're walking around in a room and someone turned off the lights and you're trying to figure out where you're going to go, right? Like it's almost incredibly difficult or incredibly impossible to find where you're going if the lights are off. And so that has more of a feeling of just like aloofness, like you, again, you're just like kind of walking around in the dark and you have no idea where to go. You're definitely not engaged in what you're working on. So these are just three types of stuck. You might also, a lot of people will identify with multiple types of stuck, right? So it's not just that you're burnout, maybe you've got a mix of a few of these. So if you identify with one of these, it's important to start by just like acknowledging, I feel stuck. What kind of stuck am I in? A lot of experts in psychology will tell you, like, sometimes just labeling the feeling that you have is incredibly helpful for moving forward. So that is not a power move necessarily, but it is a power move, just not one that we were going to cover. But it's definitely a power move to recognize maybe how did you get here? Which of these words do you hear and you go, that's me, that's totally me. And also, are you stuck, and can you identify maybe what type of stuck you are? Okay, so moving right along, as that's kind of our pre-work to what we're about to get into. What we're going to specifically cover in this workshop is how to figure out your next career move, why the dream job doesn't exist, and that's actually a really good thing that we'll talk about. And of course, we'll go over some actionable ways to move your career forward right now. Obviously, a lot of people have had their job status change, it feels like literally overnight. And so I would argue that even if you have not had your job status change, what has happened is that maybe you are looking through a different lens with your career. So like, even if you're still employed, your job has changed. So basically every single person, I would say maybe even the whole world has had a career shift in the last 90 days, which is incredible. And that's never happened before. Okay, so now we're going to get into our 10 power moves. So the first power move is to take control by prioritizing your mental, emotional, and physical health. The biggest power move that you can make to rev up all areas of your life is to prioritize, and this is important, I said these separately on purpose, your mental, emotional, and physical health. So this all comes down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And according to this social principle, the most important thing you can do for your success is to first establish your basic needs, like different types of health. Okay, so that's the first thing. You cannot make any career and life moves or do anything well if you are not first prioritizing yourself and your basic needs. And then after getting your house in order, your mental, emotional, and physical health house in order, you can climb up the ladder of fulfillment until you've reached self-actualization or your total full potential, right? So the idea here is, it's like that saying, when the oxygen mask comes down, put it on yourself first before you help other people. Well, before you can address other parts in your career or life, first we need to make sure that we are reaching our full potential with our own mental, emotional, and physical health. So let's just start with some quick power moves that you can try. These are the actionable things that you can do that I would recommend is, and I know you guys were on the main stage, they were talking about routines and schedules. Same idea here a little bit, which is create and stick to a morning routine. So did you have a morning routine before COVID, and what's your morning routine been after COVID? Or now that COVID has started, did you just say, oh, no more morning routine because I'm not getting up and going to work the same way? So that is really important. Okay, just reading some of these comments, making sure. Okay. So the next power move that you can make, these are actionable items for you, is to create a ritual to celebrate a milestone, like revamping your resume finally, or even like the milestone of ending your workday and going into your non-work part of your day. I know someone I follow on social media, she lights a candle at the end of the day as a way to signify and kind of ritualize the experience of like, okay, I'm going from my work from home to just being home and available to have a life, right? So what can you ritualize in your routines also? Ritualizing morning routines, nighttime routines, those are probably things that we've heard about a lot. But it's really important because actually there's a lot of research that has shown that rituals have this very restorative power. So they, talking about burnout and feeling stuck, one of the things is we're trying to restore our energy, and rituals can really help with that. Okay, the other power move to try is try taking a 20-minute power walk at lunch each day. There's a lot of research that shows how walking and stepping away from your work is incredibly energizing and helps you there's this thing called attention residue, meaning as you move from task to task to task, if you don't give yourself a little bit of space in between those tasks, you build up attention residue. So it's very important that you, whether you're doing Zoom calls or nonstop meetings or even nothing related to meetings and just working on tasks, that you take these breaks to separate, and so you don't build up that quote unquote attention residue. Yeah. If you walk out of this room while your child is awake, forget about it. But you could also just walk around in circles in the room, or sit in silence, or listen to one song and then go back to your work. So the idea is to just separate it so that that attention residue doesn't build up. But that's pretty funny. Okay. Power move number 2 that you can make to help you pivot and reboot your career is to manage your inner critic and negative self-talk. We all have these inner critics. And for women, I don't know why, but our inner critics seem to be very loud, very mean, and they seem to be pretty much on all the time, or at least I have felt that way. So following the technique of setting yourself up for future success, an important power move to make is to master early on managing your inner critic and negative self-talk, right? That is something that we have to be in control of, because by learning to recognize, address, and even prevent this type of language, you can avoid some common stumbling blocks that are sure to crop up in times of anxiety, and most especially success. So what happens is, if you don't manage your inner critic when you are at those really pivotal moments of your life, whether you're feeling really anxious or even maybe you are really excited because you have this big presentation or something going on, guess what? That inner critic is going to take over. That negative self-talk is going to come, and it's going to just push you right off of that platform that you're on. So how can you do this? How can you manage your inner critic and your negative self-talk? Well, a couple power moves that you can try today. Again, I love everything to be super actionable. Is create a self-love mantra that you repeat 3 times a day. Maybe you write out one sentence and you tape it onto your computer, and then you repeat it morning, afternoon, and nighttime, right? Again, there isn't maybe research where we've synced people up into machines and track their brain waves on this, but how you speak to yourself has a huge difference on so many parts of your life. So it's very important that the narratives that you are getting to yourself or saying to yourself, those narratives are positive ones and they are encouraging ones. It's very hard to have this negative inner critic or self-talk in your ear or in your head all the time and then expect that you're going to do your best. So someone said, I make my mantra be my password. So I say to myself multiple times. I like that. That's actually a really good idea, to make your password your mantra. Awesome. A walk to a coffee shop is my dream life. Yeah. Exactly. That's a really good hack, Gina. Okay, moving on to some other power moves that you can try is journal and write out the conversation with your inner critic. So I was once listening to this podcast and it was about relationships and whether you're married or your partner or whatever, one of the things the guy was saying is that it was a podcast on Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. And what the psychologist was saying is that when you are having an argument or an intense conversation with your partner, a really good idea can be to write out the whole conversation. And it's really fascinating because it allows your brain to slow down and think. And it's basically you're managing your emotions as you are having those conversations. Well, guess what? Exactly how you would approach a tough conversation with your partner, you can do the same thing when you're approaching a tough conversation with yourself / your inner critic. So that means having a journal nearby when you feel those moments creep up where your inner critic is coming out, you are starting to feel yourself have these negative emotions and self-talk, get out your journal and start writing down everything that you're feeling. That will be incredibly not just like therapeutic, but also a very healthy way of coping through and getting to the other more positive side of that emotion. Another great tip, especially when you're journaling, is I actually named my inner critic. I happened to name her after a bully I had in high school, but I definitely recommend naming your inner critic because now when you're journaling, you can kind of have this person that you're talking to in third person. For whatever reason, that helps me a lot with kind of feeling like I am not this. This is just something I'm feeling at the moment. Another thing with your inner critic and negative self-talk is see if you can be just a bit kinder with the words you use to describe yourself. So instead of having it be an inner critic, let's say, you know what, because on one hand, inner critics are there to motivate you and they want the best for you. But what we need to do is say to your inner critic, I recognize that you're there and I see that you're trying to help me, but instead of being an inner critic, I need you to be an inner coach. I need you to shift over to that role. It's not that I'm not trying to get motivated and encouraged by your support, but instead of, throwing me down and saying how awful I did at that job interview, let's talk about maybe what I learned from that and how I can take those learnings and successfully move them into other places that would actually help me next time. So you want to switch your inner critic from being that critic to a coach. And that's why the journaling is so helpful because you can have this actual dialogue with yourself. And it's important to know, researchers found with this that your brain cannot do a massive pendulum swing. So you can't go from the inner critic being like, I'm the worst, phone interviewer ever to I'm the best phone interviewer ever. Your brain won't buy it. So that's why it's not about going from negative to positive. It's about going from negative to inner coach, right? The learnings, the teachings, what can you take away from it? Amazing. Okay, power move number 3 is know your wants, needs, and strengths. So plenty of professionals out there wander from job to job, hoping to gain skills and enough experience that will put them ahead, right? That's a really reactive kind of, again, you're just like going wherever, you're reacting to whatever shiny balls in your face or, thing that happens to pop up on your Instagram or your LinkedIn or whatever. So a key power move though, is that very few people actually do is to invest your limited attention to clearly defining your wants, your needs, and your strengths. And the best place to do that is to start with you, right? Because only you truly know what is it that you want, not what you think you should want. What is it that you need, those basic needs, not the needs of your friend and you're just assuming, oh, well, if she needs that, I need that too, or something. And then your strengths. So one of the power moves that I would really encourage people to do, and this is interesting because whether you've lost your job or not, one of the things I would encourage everyone to be doing right now is to take some time to self-reflect on their career. So what is working in your career right now? What's not working in your career? What gives you a lot of energy? Where have you been successful in your role so far? So again, whether you've been laid off or not laid off, you should be doing this self-reflection. It's really, really helpful. And I feel like what this pandemic has done is it's disrupted our routines and it's taken away some of the distractions that maybe were keeping us very busy. And so we weren't ever saying, I'm going to hit pause and I'm going to take time to reflect on this. By the way, the answers to these things are not going to come overnight. That's why I really love journaling, and I really love using that as sort of maybe a part of your either morning routine or nighttime routine, because in order to self-reflect and understand, you're going to want to observe your patterns. You're going to want to have that data for, maybe a 30-day period so you can maybe answer some of these questions. But again, the self-reflection is, where have I been successful in my role so far? What lessons have I learned? What have I accomplished? What gives me energy? What doesn't give me energy? If I could change something about my career/job, what are those things that I would do? So these are all good questions to be asking yourself. The other thing you want to do is determine your career. I call these your career ideals, but essentially they're your wants, your needs. And the way I break up your career ideals is into a few different categories where it's your must-haves and your deal breakers and maybe your nice-to-haves. And we actually have a free worksheet on Career Contessa. I'll pull it up really quickly, where I ask you to figure out your next career, or I am giving you prompts to help you figure out your next career move by asking you these things. And here, let me put it into the chat. What's really helpful about this worksheet is that it's going to ask you, especially if you have been laid off or you're using this as self-reflection and think about what you want to do next, it's going to ask you, okay, how big of a team do you want to work on? Maybe you want to work on a small team. Maybe your must-have is that you want to work with at least one other person, but a deal breaker would be working on a team that's 20 plus people. Things like that are really important to understand, because the more you know your career ideals and what your wants and needs are out of your career, the more successful you will be at figuring out that next career move and getting that. So you can download that worksheet to kind of, which is basically a whole workshop in itself on the career ideals. The next power move I want you guys to do when it comes to knowing your wants, needs, and strengths is to identify your strengths by knowing what gives you energy and where have you found success at work. So it's really the overlap of those two things. So the two questions you want to ask yourself is, what gives me the most energy at work? And then the second question you want to ask yourself is, where have I been successful at work? And make sure that the things that you are successful at work are actually required for your job. So I always give the example of, like, I might be the world's best gardener, but if it's not required for my job, then that's a hobby, right? So where are you the expert, the go-to person for something at work? Where do you see success at work? And then if you can, overlap that with the things that give you energy. So those are two questions that you want to ask yourself and try to answer. This is a whole section that I cover in the book as well, because what they found is that people who are using their strengths at work are 6 times more likely to be engaged on their job. So you want to not only be using your strengths and your skill set in your day-to-day job, but you want to be setting goals and working toward milestones that are going to incorporate those as well, because then you'll be more engaged. And what we know about being more engaged at work, it leads to more opportunities and more success and more fulfillment. So, at the end of the day, all of these are just like little breadcrumbs that you are laying out for yourself and then kind of following along the way. Okay. Power move number 4, in order to help you pivot and reboot and build a career purpose, is to go on a listening tour if you need. So, did I make it sound too easy to figure out all your answers to life's questions? I probably did. And certainly that worksheet will help. But another thing that you can do, and I know that a lot of successful women, including myself, have done, is that they don't actually come up with their wants, needs, and strengths all on their own. What they will do is they will go on what I call a listening tour. It's kind of like, you probably know, like politicians will do this, right? They'll go on these listening tours and hold these town halls to kind of learn what are the issues that people are having. Well, you're kind of doing that, but we're going to switch the concept around where the listening tour is all about you. So another way of referring to these are like informational interviews. So if you are still employed and you are just trying to determine what are your wants, needs, and your strengths, more importantly, your strengths and like what you're the go-to expert on, then maybe create a list of 5 people that you admire and reach out to them for an informational interview. And maybe what you're trying to learn and what you're listening to is, what is their job? How did they get there? What strengths and skills do they have that are required for their role? And then if there are people that you've worked with, you could also say, look, here, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've kind of done some research. I would say, here are the 3 things that are my strengths and skills. Do you see that in me? Or, when it comes to my strengths and skills, what do you see as my strengths and skills? So you're basically creating this request for feedback, but you're also learning about the other person and what they see as their own strengths and how they've gone further along in their career, as a way to help maybe inspire and educate you on maybe some skills gaps that you might have, or things that you want to work on. So listening tours that. And then the other flip side of this is that if you've been laid off or furloughed, what I would encourage you to do is go on a listening tour, but do it instead of asking just people who you used to work with. You could do that, but I would also include, create a list of 5 companies that you would want to learn more about. So based on your career ideals and what you need in your next role, I'm a big fan of not having my job search be all about the job title, but instead having my job search be focused around target companies. So now that you know your wants, your needs, and your strengths, let's create a list of target companies. I would say start with a list of like maybe 20 companies that interest you. It doesn't have to be extensive why they made the list. It could literally be your best friend works there, or maybe you really like how they've handled their leadership has handled the response to the pandemic. Maybe you visit their website every day. Maybe it's a product and a service you love, right? So whatever the reason, write these down on a list or a piece of paper. Maybe it's 20 companies. Then compare those companies, learn everything you can about these companies. And by the way, in the book, there's step-by-step directions on how to do this, but learn everything you can about the companies, and then compare those companies and what they offer and their values, culture fit, all the things to what you want in your career, your career ideals. You're probably going to cross off a lot of those companies. That's fine. But the 5, I would say 2 to 5 companies that remain on the list, maybe even more, I would encourage you to set a goal of reaching out to people who work at those companies to have informational interviews. Maybe you're not necessarily job searching today, or maybe they don't even have a role open that you want to apply for, but that's the best part. You are just trying to learn more about what it's like to work there, how they got their job there, what the company really values, so that if you do decide to apply for a job there, or job search with them in mind, you have a lot more clarity around how you can tailor your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, you're building relationships with people working there. And the most important thing is that you want to articulate the skills and the strengths that you have, your wants and needs, as they can provide value for that organization, right? So these listening tours become so valuable because you're able to leverage that into a unique way where you can showcase very concisely, here's why I want to work here. One of the other power moves I would encourage you to just constantly be asking yourself is, what's your why? Why are you doing this? Whether it's something in your day-to-day for your time management, or when it comes to your job search. Why? Why that company? Why that role? Why that person? Are you reaching out to them? Why? Okay, so here is a template for your listening tour email. So again, it's, hi name, I'm reaching out because I'm on a career listening tour of the professional connections I most admire and respect as I determine what roles to pursue. I'm doing some research to prepare for my next career move. And again, this is the why part, insert why you're reaching out to them. Would you be willing to have a 20-minute conversation with me so I can get your perspective on 2 questions? This is where you would insert the skills you enjoy most and even an example of where or when you use them. When you hear this, what roles or individuals does it make you think of? Number 2, is there anyone else you think I should speak with about this topic? And then you give them a little bit more background information. So that is the person who is going on the listening tour because they're trying to figure out what is their next career move and how can they use the professional connections they have to help them kind of determine that. This is even better if you can narrow it down to reaching out to people in those target companies. Okay, power move number 5, this is a big one, is to abandon the myth of the dream job. And I know I'm about to burst everyone's bubble, but the dream job doesn't exist. That's actually a really good thing. But I mean, a lot of us feel like it does exist. And the reason why the idea of the dream job, I think, is comforting actually at times, is that there's a piece of that where it's like, well, if there's one perfect job out there, then it feels very safe. It feels very sane. It feels very, again, comforting that there's this one thing out there, and even though you haven't found it, it exists and you will find it. And once you do, it will fix all your problems, right? It's, I mean, there's so many metaphors for this. It's like thinking that there's one perfect partner out there, or thinking that, you know, if you lose 10 pounds, it's going to fix everything else, right? Or if you make this much money, it's going to fix everything else. So like, we know that human behavior really loves feeling like these things exist out there. And unfortunately, they don't exist. But let me tell you why that's actually really good, because a study from 2017 with Stanford researchers found that the myth of the dream job is closely aligned with the myth that human beings have fixed passions, and that once we find our passion, right, we check that box and apply it to work, we will be fulfilled. That's not how it works. And one of the reasons why is because human beings are not fixed, right? Our passions are going to change and adapt. Where what you wanted at 20 is not the same at what you want at 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on. And so the most important thing that we can recognize is that human beings are not fixed. And that's one of the reasons why this doesn't work, which is why, you know, the checking of a box, and if I check that box, then I'll be fulfilled. It is not that type of equation, right? Again, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. That's not how this works. And I know that's what we were all sold, but that's unfortunate. And now it's time to kind of switch that mindset, because you know what is, Jamie? I'm going to work each day feeling excited, motivated, and fulfilled. You can create this environment for yourself by setting your own clear expectations, boundaries, and personal goals, not by relying on a job to fulfill your dreams and affirm your desires, right? So even though there's all this thinking about, well, it should look like that, it's because when you dream up your dream job, guess what? It only includes all these amazing things that maybe happen once in a while. So of course, the reality compared to the dream is so far apart, right? But you were setting yourself up for failure because you never dreamed about the challenges. You never dreamed about the fact that there's going to be days at work where you don't know the answer, or you're scared, or you're anxious, or something like that. So the power move that you want to make is to create a list today of all the ways that you can define success for yourself. What does your dream job look like now? So those power moves are specifically is to shift your thinking from what you think work should look like to defining how work works best for you, right? So when you are imagining all, like with all your optimism, and you're like, oh, it's going to be this and this and this, and I'm going to do that. Also make sure that you are envisioning the pessimistic side of everything, all the challenges that are going to come your way. Because if you start visualizing only the positive and not the negative, when the negative comes your way, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like there's this burden, even though we know that will happen, right? The other thing that you want to really work toward is to develop a growth mindset. Because again, as human beings, we are not fixed. So when you have this fixed mindset and you grow psychologically attached to this dream job or this thing, or when I check this box, this thing will happen. You know what they found? That when people have this fixed mindset and they grow psychologically attached to the idea of this thing, the idea of abandoning it, even when it doesn't serve them anymore, is more painful for them than it is to just go through with it, right? I mean, I'm going to use like an overused example here, but it's like the person who decided they want to go to law school, but then in the middle, they're like, I know that law school is not a good fit for me. I don't want to do this. But they're so psychologically attached to the idea that it's more painful for them to let it go than to just continue with it, right? So that's not what we want. We want to be able to develop a growth mindset, which takes into account that you are going to change over time. Your passions, your interests, your skill sets, your life stages, all of that's going to change. So again, it means that you see and use and feel adaptability and flexibility are your best professional assets, not these other things, right? Because those allow you to have that growth mindset. And the third power move to try is to determine and write down your career beliefs. So what do you believe about careers? Maybe you believe that careers are always changing, right? This is another one that you could write down your career beliefs, and kind of like how companies have a mission statement or they write out kind of, here are our values. Like, what are your career beliefs and values? Okay, power move number 6 to try is to get social with it. So in addition to creating personal and professional connections, regularly networking and investing energy in building relationships is an important part of creating a positive reputation report for work referrals, professional questions, and leadership opportunities. I.e., coming to events like this is really important, but you also want to make sure that you are building your networking in other places. So, you don't want networking to only be virtual events or only phone calls with people right? You want to have a variety. And what they have found in research is that when it comes to being fulfilled in your career, what truly leads to people being fulfilled, well, not just in work, but in life also, is their relationships. So this is something that you should always be working toward, is how can I build up good relationships, networking, right? You are making deposits into the networking bank through maybe people that you've worked with in the past, peer networks, so people who are your peers, people who are maybe people you admire and they're a little bit above you in the quote unquote career ladder, but also reaching out for new connections, right? So some power moves that you can try are to set up a virtual networking event. Whether you come to something like this or you set up your own virtual networking event, maybe you invite 3 friends to a virtual networking event and you tell them all to bring one other person, right? Attending virtual networking events, fitness classes, or other socially distant socializing are all good power moves to try. Another thing is to find or even become a professional mentor. That is a great way to build relationships with people, is to become a mentor for somebody. And if you're job searching, another thing I would encourage you to do in order to actually build up your relationships is to consider finding a job search accountability partner. So these are all power moves you can try in order to help you become more social, obviously socially distantly social, but also recognizing that networking. I just hosted a whole webinar on this on Career Contessa, which, by the way, all of our webinars are free right now. So let me put that also in the link, because if you want additional resources that will teach you about strengths and networking, definitely watch. All these replays are free right now. But we had an entire webinar about how to be good at networking and why it is so important to not just build new connections, but also maintain those connections. So definitely check that out if you want more advice on networking. But what I like about the job search accountability partner is that when it comes to maybe you're in the middle of a job search right now and you're finding it hard to stay motivated or to set goals, when you have an accountability partner, not only do you have someone that can, support you by just having regular check-ins, but also it allows you to know, like, hey, I want to get this done this week, so I have something new for that check-in. So when I was first starting Career Contessa, I always say one of the most important things that ended up happening, which I kind of fell backwards into, is somebody else I knew. She was on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. We were both starting career coaching related businesses around the same time. Every other Friday from 12 to 1, we would check in with each other. And that was incredibly helpful, but also it was very motivating and helped me not feel so isolated in the process. Job searching especially can make you feel like you have zero control over what's happening and you can lose motivation very quickly. But by having an accountability partner, that's incredibly helpful for you to continue to move forward and keep those small steps adding up to the big things every day. Okay. Let's see, moving on to the next one. Okay, power move number 7 is to become a goal getter. So this power move feels a bit more straightforward, but it's still important to be very strategic. You guys have probably been told, set goals. You've set goals. January came and went and you made your resolutions and your goals. But becoming a goal getter by not only setting goals for yourself, but also setting them with value-based intention, right? So it's all about thinking about what are your values, your career beliefs. So you're probably recognizing that there's a very repetitive theme of getting clear with yourself first builds into continued growth, right? So some power moves that you can try is to dedicate 1 hour a week to specific career development activities. When I was interviewing people for my book, there was this woman who she has something called Career Development Fridays. So every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m., she would dedicate that hour to specific career development activities, whether it was networking, listening to a podcast, reading an article, reading a book, taking an online course. The whole idea was that she would set goals, and then she was spending an hour every week making sure that she was doing activities that would help her, successfully achieve those goals. Another recommendation is to set SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So you want to set SMART goals, and then I would encourage you to share them with a friend, because when you have those goals and you share them out loud, I'm just putting a link to in the chat. Also, here's another article we have on Career Contest about how to set SMART goals. When you share them with a friend, they become much more real, right? You've said them out loud, you're labeling them. And so all of that's really helpful for you in order to actually accomplish those goals. All right. So the next one you want to do related to power moves is to recognize and label any triggers that bring on imposter syndrome, comparison, your inner critic. We already talked about that stops you from pursuing your goals. So when you are pursuing your goals, those SMART goals, do you ever have moments where you say, there's no way you're going to be able to do this? Like, this seems impossible. I have no idea where to even get started. So as you have those moments and you're noticing imposter syndrome creep in, that's where you can talk to your job search accountability partner, or just the friend that you shared the goals with, where you're talking and you're labeling these things out loud. Again, all of this stuff adds up, right? It's these small little micro power moves that you're making that help you build up into the bigger power moves. So labeling them, talking about them, being consistent about having those chats with your friend about your goals, and checking in with your goals once a week. All of these things at the end of the day are truly what make the difference between someone who is reactively going through their career versus proactively directing their career. I don't know about you guys, but I like the proactive part of that a lot more. So, all right, we're on power move number 7 out of 10. All right, here's a SMART goals example. So like I said, you're going to consider the 5 W's, the who, what, where, why, and when. So an example for the specific is, I want to become a project manager, the exact steps that you'll take to achieve it, the timeline for completing the goal, and then your measure of success, right? So this is just a quick example, but the reason why it's not really helpful to set a goal without specifics with it is because it's way too broad, and it's very hard to have your own buy-in with that as well. Okay, power move number 8 is to get curious and start learning. So one thing that no person can teach you is how to get curious about your life, right? But the one constant that we know about the workplace is that it will change. It's always changing. It's not just in the last 90 days that things have changed. They were always changing. So I would encourage you to shake things up in your day-to-day by learning something new. Maybe it's just more formal, like taking an online class or listening to an educational podcast, but maybe it's literally like, hey, I always ask the designer or the accountant to do this thing, and I'm just going to learn how to do that. That's the skill I'm going to learn this week. If you want, again, more formal teaching, there's mocks and free university classes. For example, Yale has this very popular happiness class that they're giving away for free right now. So that's something that you could do that will help and be that really is good for your overall well-being, but it's also learning something new. So it doesn't always have to be learning something new just as it relates to your work. Sometimes you can learn something new that relates to just pure interest or something you'd like to do. Someone took the Yale course and loved it. Yeah, so those are all good places to start. The other place to start is to watch YouTube videos, webinars, tutorials. Let's say you're trying to learn a new software system like Squarespace. Squarespace has tons of tutorials, or Shopify, tons of tutorials on their own company's websites, as well as YouTube. You'll find a gazillion of those too. The Yale course, I literally think is called... Lisa, maybe you can look it up for us and drop it in the chat, but it's called like the happiness class or something, right? I can't, it's escaping me right now, but cool. So yeah, Jessica's saying it's called that. Okay, so let me see if I can find it for you. Yeah, Yale's most popular course. Oh, the Science of Well-Being, that's what it is. So if you type that into Google, you will find it. Okay, moving along to our next power move. We're on 9 out of 10. You guys are doing so well. Is to gain influence, right? So basically, in order to gain influence and create value at work, you want to be paying attention, or like another phrase for this kind of work is managing up. Maybe that's a term you guys have heard a lot. So the reason why this is such a big power move is because, and one that you want to practice over and over again, is because at the end of the day, there are going to be people and projects and co-workers and all the stuff that influence your career, right? And so it's important that you recognize, okay, how can I make sure that I'm creating real value here, and that I'm gaining influence with the people or the people or the projects or the clients at work that matter, right? So a power move that I practice again and again is to advocate for myself and my team at Career Contessa. I just interviewed someone and she said, advocating for yourself and closing that self-promotion gap is like an artist where they've created this masterpiece and the last thing they need to do is put their signature on the art, right? So advocating for yourself and letting people know what it is that you do that creates value for this organization or your team or whatever is like putting your signature on the artwork, right? You can do the best work in the world, but you want to make sure that you let people know that you've created this value. It's going to help you gain influence at work. But the other thing is that you want to make sure that you're always advocating for yourself, asking for what you need, speaking up when you've got questions. And again, making sure that people know that that's your signature. A great way that you can actually gain influence at work also is by becoming a better listener. Which the reason why that's helpful is because it helps you build meaningful moments that help you set boundaries while simultaneously gaining influence. So some power moves that you can try are to support your colleagues. So let's start at the beginning of like, where can you start with this whole process before you're maybe putting your signature on the artwork, is just be a supportive colleague. And when they share ideas, you're a good listener, you ask them questions and you show interest, right? That alone is a way to gain influence at work, because those people will recognize like, wow, when I talk to Lauren, she really listens. She shows up for me. I want to do the same thing for her. Another way that you can gain influence and create value at work is to become an expert on something that matters to your boss and then share it often. So how do you know what matters to your boss? Well, go to your boss and set up a one-on-one meeting and say, I want to know what are the most important things that our team or the project that we're working on or our clients, what's the most important thing to be working on right now, especially during this current landscape. Another thing, and I'm going to show you an example of it, a way that you can gain influence and show that you've created value is by sending these weekly work updates to your boss. We call it the no need to respond email. And what's really important about this email, I'll explain it while you guys look at the example, is that there's no need for them to respond, right? The idea here is that you want to make sure it's like putting your signature on the artwork in a really subtle way. You want to make sure your boss is aware, or maybe even your team is aware of what you're working on, and making sure that it relates to their overall goals and what's most important to them. So something you might send every Monday to your boss. And by the way, your boss does not need to respond to this. This is kind of almost like your own paper trail, but also, again, you're just subtly, consistency is very important. I'm letting them know. So on Monday, you're going to say, here's what I'm working on. Here are my ongoing projects. Let me know if you have any feedback. And on Friday, you're going to let them know, here's what I accomplished. Maybe here are some challenges I ran into and how I addressed them. And here are my ongoing projects moving forward. So this allows you to have a paper trail of the influence and value that you are creating for an organization. And bosses love when people over communicate. I think the very important piece here is that these emails should be short and concise. So utilize bullet points, bold the things that are important. So make sure it's aesthetically pleasing and easy to read as well. But again, like consistency, very, very important. Okay, and power move number 10. That should not say gain influence. It should be embrace progress. Sorry, guys. At the end of the day, no success takes place overnight. So if you're the kind of mover and shaker that wants to pivot and reboot on the regular, remember to be patient as you're building your career a purpose, and also to just get going, right? We need to be better about embracing progress and finding joy in the career development process than only thinking about the end destination, right? Perfection can be the enemy of success when you spend too much time deliberating, adjusting, contemplating, and really doing everything you can to avoid moving forward. So don't mistake motion for action. One of the best tools I have found in order to help you be better about embracing progress over perfection is to keep a work journal. And here are some prompts any work journal will do. I know someone asked me if there's a journal I really love. I mean, I'm fine with just lined paper, because for me, I feel like, especially when it comes to your work, no journal is going to be perfectly personalized to your specific work situation. So you could just start a basic journal, lined paper, and at the end of every day or week, you could, in your work journal, write, what is one lesson I learned? Did I get any feedback, positive or negative? And what was it? Write that down. What's one thing that I accomplished? Did I go above and beyond on anything, and what was it? And what is one thing I want to accomplish tomorrow or next week? So that, just by taking a step back and recognizing, and every week kind of writing down in your work journal what you accomplish, you will start to train your brain and your mindset to be much more focused on what are the small wins that you are getting, right? Embracing that progress over perfection. It's the small wins add up to the big, big moves, right? And so what's really hard for us as humans to do is to only focus on that big thing for a really long period of time. We like to have motivation that's reinforced with, positive wins along the way. And there's actually something called the progress principle. These researchers at Harvard even wrote a book about it. And what they found is that literally when you do track and celebrate these small wins, it creates forward momentum. That forward momentum helps you engage more in your career and your life on a daily basis. So there is this positive domino effect that comes from saying, I'm not going to worry about having a 5-year plan or the dream job. I'm going to live in the moment today and recognize what are my small wins today or this week. So again, how can you learn how to embrace progress over perfection? I think one of the best tools I've seen is by keeping a work journal and really creating a consistent habit where you are tracking the progress that you make each week. Okay, so we've gone through our 10 power moves. Congratulations. Let's talk about why you showed up today. You showed up today because you want to be in the driver's seat of your career. You showed up today because you're ready for a reboot in your career and life. And just a note about the reboot. I think a lot of people think the reboot is about the hustle. The reboot is not about the hustle. The reboot is about resilience. It's about taking a step back, hitting pause, going through those self-reflection exercises, and then moving forward. You showed up today because you want to be more fulfilled at work. I hear you. We all do. And you showed up today because you want to ditch the ambition trap that maybe you've fallen into. So you are ready to make a power move if these are all reasons why you are here today. But I promise I would tell you what a power move is, since this is a term you've probably heard before. But for me, power moves are the decisions or actions or behaviors or the habits or the rituals, all these to-do list items, right? That make it possible to have a fulfilling career on your terms. So I know that sounds like power moves can be a lot of things, and they can be, and they're unique to each person, but here's what they're not. They're not repetitive behavior expecting different results, right? They're not more of the same thing. Power moves are not behavior guided by other people's expectations. Power moves are not agreeing to do things that don't align with your personal values, right? So you need to know what you want and what you need to have in order to figure out what are your personal values. And most importantly, power moves are not shortcuts to performing the necessary steps. If we were talking about wellness or fitness or whatever, that kind of stuff, I would say the metaphor here is that a lot of people love fad diets. They want the quick fix. They don't want the shortcut to performing the necessary steps, right? Power moves, and the phrase, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Power moves are the lifestyle. They are part of your career lifestyle. They're an overall approach to your career where you focus on daily, medium, and big habits, actions, decisions that are rooted in intention, right? So the difference between a regular move and a power move is that there's a lot of intention behind the power move versus just a move. Proactive, reactive. So in my new book, I talk about this and I'm going to teach you how to do this. And my book is called Power Moves, How Women Can Pivot, Reboot, and Build a Career of Purpose. I will go ahead and put a link to the book website in case you guys want to learn more about it and even order a copy of the book. So let me tell you a little bit more about what you get out of the book. You'll learn with thousands of insights, stories, and experiences, you'll learn the secret to building your own purposeful career with a power moves approach. So how can you approach your career? By implementing power moves, both daily or small, medium and big. You'll learn the process for developing an approach so you can start actively guiding, again, with intention, the direction of your career, one that provides fulfillment with real life examples from successful women in a variety of industries and backgrounds. There's an entire section called Power Moves, Power Women. I think you guys will enjoy it. You'll learn how to identify notorious career traps. There's actually 4 of them that you really want to watch out for. And then I'll take you through a foundational toolkit organized into 4 critical sections. So, and the order is on purpose: self-care, relationships, career, and money. With clarity, relatability, and directness, the Power Moves approach is the difference between desperate luck and calculated success. Again, it's reactive versus proactive. And Power Moves is a much needed handbook filled with practical information, advice, and essential tools. I even include a ton of worksheets and graphics. So everything you're seeing here, you're getting just like a little sliver, a taste of it, but think of that as like the whole meal. And my goal is to really help you be able to take power moves that lead toward decisive actions without all that self-doubt and fear, right? That analysis paralysis that can keep us stuck. So imagine if your behavior is 100% rooted in your own personal values. Imagine if you start to find joy in the actual process of developing your career versus thinking about and dreaming about the end destination. Imagine if you have the foundational tools to build a successful career suited for you and only you. Sounds pretty amazing. Imagine if you are inspired to develop your own power moves approach so that you can reboot your career. And imagine if you always feel in control of your career, even as you have to navigate pivots and face unknowns, right? Imagine if you had those tools, right? That would be awesome. And most of us don't have these tools because those tools were not even part of the curriculum when we were growing up. So we have to relearn and reteach ourselves these tools that we need in order to build a successful and fulfilling career on our terms. So again, I put the link in the chat, but you can go to powermovesbook.com to order the book. There's also a free book discussion guide. So one of the things we were talking about is to get social with it. That's a power move that you can make. You could buy this book, download the free book discussion guide, and start your own book club with other women talking about these topics. Talking about these topics is the best place to get started. So thank you so much, you guys, for coming to my presentation today and learning 10 power moves that will help you build your own career of purpose and help you pivot and reboot. There are a lot of action items in here. You are going to get the replay that will include the slides in here. And let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, Run Career Contessa, think and talk about careers all the time. Oh, so the book discussion guide, I'll put it right here in the link. You can download it from powermovesbook.com, or you can just download it from here. I just put that in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Have the best day continuing on with the Motherly Honest, sorry, I'm having an issue with my words. Mother Honestly Summit today. I think this is just so amazing that so many people have decided to take control of their careers by coming to a virtual summit. And of course, we have to thank Mother Honestly for just putting on a virtual summit because it is a labor of love. So thank you so much. Oh, you'll use it in your circle discussion. I love that. I think book clubs are the new networking event or networking group. So I feel like if you're part of a book club or you can start a book club, those are incredible because they're kind of, checking off multiple boxes at the same time. So thank you guys. If you have any other questions or you want to reach out to me, info@careercontessa.com is the email. Again, careercontessa.com for additional resources. All of our webinars are free right now, so you also can have that. And thank you so much. Have a good Friday, guys.